eBay, a global marketplace, a place where millions of buyers and sellers connect every day. But behind the listings, the feedback stars, and the promises of 100% satisfaction lies another story. This investigation all started with a few innocent eBay searches. Originally, I was browsing for antiques, a Roman ring here, an Egyptian figurine there. Nothing serious. Then I saw a product at a great price, maybe neglected by the algorithm or just recently listed. An ancient Egyptian figurine known as a shabti. These dolls were placed at funerals to serve the deceased in the afterlife, 2,000 to 4,000 years ago. At the normal market value, these sell from anywhere of £100 to £50,000. Selling one on eBay with a starting price of 99p in an auction is a risky game for the seller, as this is way under the normal retail price. However, if you make the rules, it is an easy game to win. This listing would instantly draw in the eyes of any collector. A starting price like this wouldn't be ignored even if the item is in bad condition. I decided, place the starting bid of 99p on a couple of the seller's items, maybe I'd get lucky and win one. In reality though, I wanted to see what price these ancient artifacts rose to at the end of the auction. Maybe I would witness those crazy prices take place in front of my eyes. Although I thought I'd better check if this is something I really do want to try and win, and I needed to get a good idea of how much money should be spent on something like this. Later that day I reached out to some collectors who specialize in ancient Egyptian artifacts. Unlike me, these people would have a good eye for what to buy and what to avoid. Here is what one of them had to say about the first artifact I bid on. It's a modern, fake, nothing but a tourist's item. Okay, what about another person's opinion? This time I got told, looks off. What provenance and what auction house? Without any further details, I'd treat it as a decorative modern piece worth maybe 20, 30 USD if you like it. There's something about the eyes and the overall condition that is not right to me. This was unsettling, as they were all saying the item was a complete fake. I then consulted an expert on another category of MD's items up for sale, ancient Mesopotamian-looking tablets. And this is what he had to say. They're all fake, and the people who made them worked really hard to make them look like they've been found in an actual excavation. But they should have spent that time learning cuneiform because a lot of them don't make sense and are just random wedges. So now we have suspicion to believe the writing on these tablets is also fake. They didn't even go to the effort to learn what they were writing and left themselves wide open to be spotted as fakes for someone who knows what they're looking at. I realized the seller must be getting these items from a dealer, or supplier at least. So I decided to dig deeper. But the only thing I could find was this: provenance from an old international collection. This was in the description of the item, but nothing else informative or helpful about the item was written. No information about the item, where it came from or exactly how it was obtained, just that they all came from some old international collection that this seller appears to have unlimited access to. As I looked into more of his items for sale, I started realizing odd details. For instance, this Christian cross had the exact same looking markings as these ancient Roman die. This was very peculiar. I again looked through the seller's items and found this ancient ring. However, one detail confused me. As brass becomes old, it oxidizes with the air and turns a bright green to blue color. This would be expected on such an old brass ring as the one I was looking at. But the oxidation seemed to also be on the red non-metallic stone in the middle of the ring. As I looked closer at the picture, I realized this oxidation looks like a powder, or maybe paint powder, added to create the effect. Just like the type of powder I would use if I were trying to create an old look on newer metal. The inconsistencies don't stop there though. If you look at many of these pieces for sale, you would see some of them have been repaired. They do admit to this in the description of their listings, and demonstrated by this UV light which highlights glue to show repairs which have been done to the artifacts. One thing that stood out to me though was that they had gone to all this effort to fix and repair these items, but not clean the big amount of caked up mud on the surface of these items. There could be two explanations for this. You make your mind up on which you believe. 1. The mud is attached to the surface of the artifacts, and removing it could damage the look or outside on the items. Or option 2. The artifacts, as we are referring to them as, have had mud added and brushed into them in order to make them look visually older, rougher and more worn down, as if they've been just found from the ground and placed on eBay. All these odd details were convincing and cast doubt on the authenticity of the artifacts being sold at MD Antiques and Artifacts. But the last detail for me to believe these artifacts are not genuine are the machine-like lines and incisions on many of the pieces for sale. For instance, on this artifact, pictured all the lines are straight, and in this image some cross over one another or do not fully connect, which would be unlikely to happen if it had been made by hand. Another point I'll bring up is that the activity of this seller added to my suspicion. When asked about the items he had for sale, no response appeared. However, when pressed with a message about how I doubted the origin of his antiques, he immediately denied it with no evidence, and is yet to get back to me on my further questions. Now, what really confused me is how this seller has achieved the numbers they have on their account. For instance, we can see they have 99.8% positive reviews and have sold 106,000 items. A couple things stick out to me here, one being the sheer volume of alleged artifacts sold. I mean, you would need access to a massive collection worth hundreds of millions, if not billions of pounds of items. But you would also need for people to understand they are buying a replica which is not stated at all in the description of the items for sale, or they are unknowingly buying very well-made replicas never actually sold under the label of genuine or authentic. But this heavily implied to the point in which I almost bought one, thinking it was real. Lastly, to wrap this up, I am not the only one who believes that these items are fakes. There is hope out there. Just listen to what this buyer had to say about MD Antiques and Artifacts. After receiving this item, I believe it is not authentic, but rather mass-produced. I have collected artifacts for nearly 50 years. I am currently 81 years old. I have seen a lot of scams, this being one of them. I want a full refund. These discoveries and the account of what I have unearthed have really shocked me, but most of all I've been surprised at how unnoticed this operation has been over the years, and how smoothly it is run, being able to amass a substantial amount of money, though what I believe are deceptive sales tactics and misleading titles which target the uneducated of those first-time buyers, trying to get in artifact or antique collecting.